Star Trek Strange New Worlds kicked off with a pilot that promised classic Trek adventure with a modern twist. But did it boldly go where no show has gone before, or did it stumble at warp speed? Craig and I are diving into Strange New Worlds to break down what's good, what's bad, and what's absolutely batshit crazy about this episode. Hit it.
So, we're here to discuss Strange New Worlds, not to be confused with Strange New Worlds, one of which is the title of the episode, one of which is the title of the series. I'll let you work out which way round that is.
Strange New Worlds. Strange New Worlds. Okay.
Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds. It'll be on all week.
Strange New Worlds. Anyway, yeah. So there was a lot of hype leading up to this, and of course we met most of the characters already through Discovery. Fair to say we were excited for this.
Oh, and then some. I mean, you look back at it, and you can see that this is the Star Trek prequel show that the fans wanted.
Yeah.
You know, it's a case of when, and it's all down to season 2 of Discovery, and it's all down to the casting of Anson Mount.
Yeah.
To be fair, if there's ever, you could just point at one thing, it's because of him and because of the fans' reaction to him and his portrayal of Pike that this whole thing happened.
Yeah.
Which is unprecedented, really.
Although casting Ethan Peck, obviously the grandson of Gregory Peck, that's not a minor casting at all. And of course, Rebecca Romaine, who, we best knew as Mystique perhaps before this, some of us. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't, even though they were only introducing at the time cameo characters, they didn't hold back with the casting at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show when it didn't take long for them to realize that this was like a breakout idea. It took them about a year or so to get the deal figured out and to get the show into motion. And it's one of those things. I bet you Netflix are good. It's the show that we wanted.
Yeah. Do you think when they introduced these characters into Discovery that they already had an idea that they'd like to do this?
I think quite in the back of their mind, yes. I think they didn't dare to dream.
Yeah.
But it was an unstoppable force.
The fan reaction was amazing.
And it was the one thing that really it helped season 2 of Discovery.
Yeah.
It helped it, and it also, you could see in season 2 of Discovery, you could see the design aesthetic changing and trying to become a little bit more what you would expect.
Yes. Yeah, they responded to criticism quite strongly. Whether they should have stuck to their guns or that's a whole debate right there. That's a whole episode just talking about that, I think. But yeah, I think as well the way they did Strange New Worlds was a reaction to the criticism that Discovery had as well. It sort of led a lot of the way, but I'm sure we'll be coming onto that sort of thing soon enough. But first, there's something else we need to do, isn't there, Craig?
Yeah, well, I'll see how much of this I can get through in the minute. I'll be cut off I'll be cut off at the wherever I need to be cut off
60-second mark. Because we are, of course, talking about your 60-second synopsis of Strange New Worlds, Strange New Worlds.
Here we go.
Your time starts now.
Christopher Pike is in a kind of exile with himself after recent events in Star Trek Discovery until Admiral Robert April recalls him from shore leave because a certain number one has gone missing on a secret mission of first contact. Pike is reluctant to return to space and confides in Spock, who's just engaged to Pring. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. He saw a vision of his own paralysis still going on, so he's in a bit of a mental state there. So they get back on to the Enterprise and they go off to the planet Kylie 279, which is about a 21st century equivalent to where Earth is at the minute, because they have detected warp signature activity going on there. When they arrive, they realize that the warp signature activity is something to do with the battle between the
That's it.
fleet, and control. Ooh.
Yeah, but that's your time up. Didn't quite get to the rest of it, but that was some good coverage. You didn't mention Pike's great big bushy beard.
Big bushy beard.
Great big bushy beard. So, for our American viewers, that's from a movie called Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz.
Simon Pegg, yes. Simon Pegg isn't the one with the great big bushy beard.
He plays some engineer in some sci-fi film. Simon Pegg at some point.
Oh yeah, he does, doesn't he? Yeah. He doesn't play Scotty though. I think I made my feelings quite clear in our J.J. Abrams. Anyway, so as ever, I think it's fair to say that anybody watching this video will have seen the pilot episode of Strange New World, so they know what happens. Anyway, let's talk about what we thought was good. What's your first on your list?
I think as a pilot episode, the story in this is a really good first contacty kind of game. Just like we've been saying in previous episodes, pilots have a habit of doing something of a first contact nature. This is a good one because it's a prime directive story, and it's also a prime directive story in respect of they've unwillingly screwed up the prime directive, and an alien race has managed to get some kind of warp technology, which they're actually using as a weapon rather than as a thing for transportation. And I think it harks back to Discovery for Discovery characters. It harks into the whole Star Trek ethos. It is a good Star Trek episode as a pilot, and it works for me. It's got a really good balance of story and humor and character development, and also it doesn't have to do that much heavy lifting because you already know half of the crew, so they don't have to shoehorn too much information in. Yes, they have to show you a bit more about Pike and his feelings and why stuff's going on, because that's quite important if you haven't watched Discovery, whereas there's a lot of this you can come in and not have to watch Discovery because of the way that the story is. It helps if you've watched Discovery, because this story is a result of what happened in the end of season 2, but it also stands alone if you haven't followed Discovery.
Yeah, and interesting. You raised the whole warp drive being used as a weapon thing. It makes me so. Some of our viewers may be aware that aside from all the Star Trek stuff and hailing frequencies, I'm also producer and I'm co-host of a UFO podcast, aliensexplored.com. Go check it out. Where
Links in the description down the bottom
Yeah, I'll shove a
somewhere.
link in the description. Hey, I do all the editing, so why not? So a bit of shameless self promotion.
Shameless plug.
But part of the UFO conversation, one of the things that keeps coming up time and time again, is that UFOs are often seen around places where nuclear technology is being used. So, nuclear weapons bases, nuclear destroyers, out to sea, that sort of thing. And it makes me wonder if, not unlike in this episode, where they come and visit because they've discovered warp technology, but they're using it as a weapon. How insane! Maybe there's something like that happening here on Earth right now. UFOs going, well, they've learned to split the atom, and they're doing what with it? So yeah, makes me wonder. Makes me
there
wonder.
You go.
Anyway,
like you said, aliens explode. Link below.
Yeah. Yes. So my first one, I got to be right out the gate with this. Anson Mount as Captain Pike. As an actor, he is absolutely phenomenal.
Easy for you to say.
Usually. And as a character, he brings the charisma, the leadership, the confidence. This isn't Pike from The Cage, although it could be because The Cage is set some years beforehand. But yeah, he's just like, he is almost like the perfect captain that you want in that seat. But he does kind of have his angst as well, and I like that in a character. Growing up, I like really didn't like characters like Captain America or Superman in my superheroes. I liked Peter Parker because he had angst. He was more relatable because he had flaws. I think, Anson Mount brings it to the table with Pike.
Definitely. He's a leading man in so many aspects because he's fought for this role and he loves this role. And I think it's one of those things that he's just I think he's a little bit heartbroken that he knows that his character's got a destiny and he's heading towards it. So it's not like his
wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. Nothing's ever set in sand with Star Trek, as we've seen before. There are multiple timelines going on. So who knows?
There we go.
But interesting to see towards the end of Strange New Worlds where they go with that.
Yeah.
Because it is a well-established, 5 years in from Strange New Worlds. We're about to get season 3, so there's only 2 years left after that.
Yeah, but they can stretch it because yes, there's been 2 years between the seasons, but it ended on a cliffhanger, so it'll take up. So time will be condensed. Just give us a bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your second good?
They gave this show a decent budget, so it has the scale, it's got the depth, it's got the production values. And they took note, as we mentioned, they took note of so much stuff from Discovery, where they've ticked a lot of boxes to make this look right. I do have me issues with it, which I've already mentioned on other episodes, where things like the secondary hull of the Enterprise is completely out of scale, the internal of it to the external, but engineering should not be that big. But anyway, that's just kind of by the by. But I think I love the updated design of the Enterprise. Aesthetically, I understand that they can't make it look exactly like it did in the original series to make sense, and they'll never. I don't think they'll ever get to a point where they'll they'll retcon it, and then at the end of the end of Strange New Worlds, it'll look like it looked in the original series. Yes, they might change the color grading on it rather than it looking a bit like a cross between the NX-01 and the Enterprise, where they could just put the smoother curves on it to make it look, just like it did in the original series. But don't think the pylons and things like that will change
No.
to do that. But I think as a series, it looks gorgeous.
Excellent. So I'm going to move my number 3 to my number 2 in this, because I've got something not entirely dissimilar, which is the cinematography and the visuals of it. Absolutely beautifully shot. We talked about that, the lessons from Discovery. I also think they learned quite a lot from the motion picture, and the way it's shot, the way you get the ship being shot, does bring me back in mind to the 7-minute ship porn scene.
The flyby
motion picture,
stuff, which we all love.
Yeah, absolutely, and the way it's lit, and the feel of it, the vibe of it. It's sleek, it's beautifully shot, and it looks and feels closer to a reasonable budget sci-fi film, than a TV series, and I think that says a lot. Yeah.
I think of it because you look back at Enterprise when they did the Mirror Darkly episodes. They got the aesthetic, the 60s thing and everything right. It looked great, and it held up well for that. But you're looking at now, that's back in 2001. So you're talking, that's like 24 years ago, referencing something that was like nearly 40 years ago before that. So now you've actually got a distance of nearly 60 years to what you have got 60 years next one, 2025. So you can't be in a modern day, you can't have the Enterprise look exactly how it did in the 60s. It's just
you can't.
But you've got to match as close to the design aesthetic as you can to make it reasonable. And I think that's what they've done with this.
I think there's definite nods, like, having the sort of the ready orange railing and things like that.
I mean, the bridge is amazing. I mean, you look at the bridge of the Enterprise and Strange New Worlds, and then you look at the bridge of Discovery, and which one looks like it should have been in that time period? Yeah, this is where they get it right, and how Starfleet should have looked, and how it all, and it's what and I know, yes, you don't necessarily capitulate to what the fans want or demand or expect, but you've got to treat it with reverence. Same with the Star Wars shows. I've mentioned it before. You change the design aesthetics for what's supposed to be at a particular time period in the genre thing, and you change it too much, and they'll be out with the pitchforks and the flaming torches.
Yeah. Just as an aside, when that episode of Enterprise came out, it was 35 years since the original series. It's now 25 years since that episode of Enterprise. So that's closer to being slap bang in the middle of TOS to now than is comfortable. Yeah, that's scary. That is terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
That is terrifying.
But come on, we remember Star Trek's 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
Like, with Star Trek 4 and things like that, back in 86, you remember that time. Do you remember the 25th anniversary when Star Trek 6 came out? And, it's...
Yeah.
25th anniversary, Jesus. Anywho.
Moving swiftly on then, what's your last good, or the last thing off your list, at least?
I'm just gonna go for something silly,
Oh,
and it's just one of the lines in the show, and it's much later on in the episode where Spock um Pike are in the lift, and the lift door opens, and they get surrounded by guys with guns and all the rest of it, and he just rolls his eyes and goes, "Take me to your leader." It's like, yes. It's just like, oh, inspire. It's just it's the whole eye roll kind of thing, and
yeah.
it's done for comedy, but it just works so well because you get it completely.
Yes, and the delivery was just absolutely on point with it. I think that's a great call. Great call there. Um, Mine is much more generic than that. It's the whole classic Star Trek vibe. The whole spirit of the original series and to an extent the next generation. Episodic storytelling, still having an underlying arc as we expect as audiences now in the age of streaming. But optimistic problem solving, alien diplomacy, Pike delivering monologues that are meaningful and hopeful and full of morals.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's classic. I have no problem with Star Trek moving on and evolving, but that return to classic Star Trek style is really nice in it.
Yeah.
Really nice in this episode. But it's not all plain sailing. Some of those strange new worlds are a bit stranger than we'd like. So what was bad about it for you?
I'll go back to something I've already said, and it's sometimes the scale of things and the way that, for instance, the Enterprise is bigger, and sometimes you see the thing I like saying about the secondary hull. It's the sets and the visuals in internal are just wrong. It should be a bit more compact than what it is.
Yeah.
And this is where sometimes on the visuals, I mean, not in this particular episode, but later on, sometimes you see flybys of the Enterprise, and the Enterprise, it should always be treated as almost like a sailing ship, a big. And then sometimes in the visuals where they need the Enterprise to do stuff, and it's weaving around, and it's this, and it's the Enterprise can maneuver and it can do stuff like that, but sometimes they've got it doing stuff that it shouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
So they've got the scale right in one thing and then the scale wrong in another, and it's just there's not a good consistency sometimes
Yeah.
over how big the ship is and how well it's shot. Sometimes it's shot beautifully, and sometimes it's not. But you look at the scale on things. Starbase One that turns up doesn't really make that much sense in this in the mid 23rd century. The fact that you've brought stuff up from Earth, like when there was, after World War Three, and the scale and the size of Starbase One. Where is it in the rest of Star Trek? Where's it ever mentioned in the rest of Star Trek? The biggest thing in Star Trek was Space Dock One. So, but Starbase One predated by X or even 100 or so years.
Yeah.
That just, I get it visually. It looks nice. But again, it's the scale it's off. It's too big, and there's just no.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. It's a bit like from the Star Trek Beyond the movie. The Yorktown, totally incongruous with the rest of the technological state at play.
I could understand that in Picard's time.
Yeah.
they're the start of the 25th century.
Hmm. Yeah, when you've got a robot slave labor force, yeah. Anyway, that's getting off topic ever so
Yeah, get back to that
slightly.
episode.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good one. Mine is how some of the characters. So you mentioned earlier, like we've met most of the like a lot of these main characters before. Pike, Spock, number one, but others like Ortegas and Larn, their introduction felt a bit rushed. And this is something I keep coming up with a lot of the pilots. It's you're cramming a lot into a pilot, and I get that, but some of the pilots have this absolutely right, and others, yeah, they're just kind of they're throwing exposition at you very quickly about that person, and you're not having a chance to sit with it. You're not having a chance to sort of learn it naturally, or yeah, it's just rushed. That's my first background, anyway.
My second one is a little bit of it's to do with not necessarily the casting, it's to do with some of the characters, and it's to do with using legacy characters that you didn't need to use. And it's nothing against the actors or anything like that. But why have you brought Kirk's brother on? Absolutely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Why have you got Uhura on? Unnecessary. Chapel, unnecessary. Mabenga, unnecessary. Because you are, years away from the original series. This should have been the point to utilize characters from the cage properly. Or like Ortega, you've got a brand new character.
Yeah.
Lan Noonien Singh, she's a great character. She shouldn't have that surname, and I think the whole. But
Oh, yeah.
I'll get on with
Yeah.
that next.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
but I just don't. I've got nothing against them. I mean, I like the characters. I think they're good. But looking just purely at when they were creating the series and purely at the pilot, you did not need to do this stunt character casting in when you can just detach yourself from the original series, make it its own without having to bring in people who are linked with it. It was strong enough to stand up on its own.
Yes, I can see that. I mean, some of them like Chapel and Benga. I don't know. I think it's nice to see it. Mind you, I have a bias because Jess Bush have a especially. I'm right. I've got to share this now. So what I'll do, I'll scan a copy properly to show the viewers. But that's me and Jess Bush. You see, look how absolutely enthralled she is to meet me.
Yes.
You can see how the excitement on her face was palpable.
She was just stunned into silence. That's all it was.
She was absolutely. And we had done some Shakespeare earlier on together. Yeah, that was a special thing at a convention. Anyway,
Was she impressed by your bottom?
She was. Yeah, Bottom has always been on my bucket list of characters to play. By the way, there we go. But no, we did the All the World's a Stage thing from As You Like It. Anyway, I'm in As You Like It later this year.
And where's that by any chance?
Sorry?
Is that in Cambridge?
That would be in Cambridge, yeah. So, to any viewers watching, I'm going to be part of this year's Cambridge Shakespeare Festival. So if you're in the UK, if you're anywhere near Cambridge, end of July and all through August, then pop along and see it. You might even see me on stage. Please don't throw any rotten fruit.
Yeah. We're going to be back with a shameless plug and put something in the comments.
Yes. I'll put a link in down below. My goodness, this really is the episode of shameless plugs, isn't it? Yeah, speaking of which, you want to mention Planet Marzipan?
And Planet Music now.
And Planet Music.
Yeah,
Links below.
Yes, so we launched that. So we're covering not just Marillion albums, but artists from all over the place. We've had Tears for Fears, Queen, Pink Floyd, Simple Minds, Pet Shop Boys. We're all over the place. So we'll do a link.
Yeah, links below. And if you happen to do an episode about the Strange New Worlds musical episode, Subspace Rhapsody,
I can
give
see
me a
that
shot.
going down like a lead balloon with the guys.
I think they're called Led Zeppelin. Yeah, there we go. Right. So that was, I've totally forgotten what your second.
My next one is to do with.
Hang on, I haven't done my second one yet.
See, we're getting all ahead of
We're
ourselves.
all over the place. We're all over the place. I'll throw it out quickly because time's getting on. It's for this one episode. The plot is quite predictable. It's as much as it's classic Trek in a lot of ways. It's also very predictable Trek. There's no surprises. There's no real risk taken in the story, I felt. I didn't really feel that number one was actually in danger.
In danger, yeah.
Yeah. So there we go.
Yeah, I thought they could have ramped up the bad guy aspect a bit more. The people just seemed more frustrated than there was no like red hat, so white hat and black hat kind of thing. Yeah. I get what you mean. To be fair, I think it would have worked quite nicely. They could have ramped it up and made it like a two-parter, made it more of like a movie thing.
Could have done. In the defense about the bad guy thing, I think what they were trying to do was like draw it as a parallel with the current situation. And if you lean too heavily, like, it's no secret.
Twirling mustache.
Don't think too much of the current government in America, for instance, and we will happily paint them as the bad guy all day long. But the supporters of that government, we'd instantly disconnect with them by doing that. So, which is fine for us, but for Star Trek, no, you got to be a bit more sort of understanding of nuance, I think. So I can see why they didn't go all that bad guy. It was a bit too close to home. Yeah. Anyway, that's that. Right. What's your third?
The dabbling a little bit in genetic engineering in this episode with Chapel, her gene therapy of using like a gene therapy to change people's appearance and stuff like that is very anti what Star Trek has established for a long period of time, is it? Because they don't want any kind of genetic manipulation, because it's all to do with yeah, and also it also makes sense because when they were doing that, Lorne was very, very against any kind of genetic manipulation of herself, because she knows her history, even though everybody else shouldn't really know about this.
Yeah, that's a that's a whole thing.
Yeah. So when you get to the point that even if it's temporary and even stuff like that, you look at what happened with Bashir in his arc in Deep Space Nine, and yes, it's a throwaway thing for a disguise, but aren't the Federation very much against this kind of thing at the minute in this time period as well?
Is it perhaps that it's because this is a temporary thing rather than a permanent genetic modification? It's like a genetic band-aid.
Yeah, but you look at in Picard, when after the synth thing happened, all work on synthetic life was banned.
Yeah. So she shouldn't really have access to the research.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
I could be heading in the wrong direction. I might have misunderstood where they were going with it, but that was just my take on it.
I can definitely see the point. Yeah, you can't have it both ways. You can't have La'an complaining about it and not recognise that it shouldn't be happening. Yeah, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. Well, my third one is about Pike's premonitions of the future, knowing what's coming in 5 years' time. I get it needs to be referenced, and I get that it is an incredibly big deal for him, but I think in the episode, it's a little heavy-handed. It's a little overutilized. I know it gets referenced more and more throughout the series, but I felt it could have been more of a slow feed, like a drip feed throughout the season, rather than so much in this one episode.
Yeah.
It started to feel overdone by the time the episode finishes.
Yeah, they seem to ease off a lot of it in season 2. It's not as it's there, but it's not as front and center.
The episode where he visits himself in his Monster Maroon, which I was totally there for, by the way. That is the best version of the Monster Maroon I've ever seen. That makes a big difference to him, I think, to where he's. I think it helps bring him context. Anyway, that's that. But we can't mention Strange New Worlds without mentioning the strange, or as we call it here on the channel, the batshit.
I've got about 6 of these.
Okay.
But I'll there's just there's a thing we mentioned in one of the episodes earlier, which is linked to that. And this is just to do with casting, and it's just, I'm not going to take it seriously. But Robert April, he suddenly got much younger and changed colour.
Yeah, much blacker.
Yes, and the similar kind of thing with young Kyle on the transporter. He suddenly got a lot less blonde British and a lot more young Asian.
We did mention Kyle on a previous episode.
Yes, we did.
I'm convinced that it's not the same Kyle. That's headcanon. Robert April, it's definitely the same Robert April, but obviously not. But I also get what they're doing there. They couldn't have done a black Robert April back in the days of TAS.
No.
So
in the cartoon,
it's more now they're doing representation because they can do representation.
The guy, the actor is great, and you just understand it. Yeah, it's we're moving forward.
Yeah, I'm going to be mentioning Robert April myself in a moment, but yeah, let's go to your first weird.
There's a couple of things that you just don't quite understand. Like, is how did Spock get to Earth, get to Earth from Vulcan essentially overnight when it takes a few days? That's just a silly thing. Why would you transport from the shuttle that's like approaching Enterprise in space dock? Why would you then transport over from the shuttle to the Enterprise when either you could have beamed up from Earth or you would have just got the shuttle and landed in the shuttle bay?
Yeah,
these are just like niggly little things.
Okay,
you can do. I've got more, but you can do these. You can break it up.
Okay, so my first one is about the uniform, and this one's a bit niggly as well, I suppose. You've got some characters like Robert April wearing the Discovery era uniform, and others like our heroes wearing the new design. It's like, make up your mind. What is the dress code? What is the uniform? And I get that's been done before. Like we've seen when they changed from the Next Generation uniform to the Voyager style or original Deep Space Nine style. There was a bit of crossover, but I don't know. That kind of makes me uncomfortable. A uniform that isn't uniform.
Yeah.
It should be uniform. That's It's in the title. Uniform means it's the same for everybody. Yeah. So that's my first.
The bit there on the planet where the Spock's genetic manipulation is breaking down,
Mhm.
and Kyle can manage to transport the liquid into his eyes.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, he's good, isn't he?
It's using the transporter as a magic wand,
Yeah.
which there was a sort of vaguely similar thing in a later episode, but it was done for comedic effect when they transport the flavor back into the chewing gum while she's chewing it.
Yes.
Which I mean, that was just funny and nice. But yeah, that takes some precision,
Yes.
given how fast a planet spins. And even as Spock stood still, he'd been moving at an incredible rate in relation to the ship. Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. My second one also relates to Spock. However, it's Spock and Tripring having sexy time.
Yeah, that's on there.
it's I'm absolutely convinced this was just an excuse to get Ethan's top off. I'm absolutely convinced of that. But it shows a more open and emotional Spock than what we're perhaps accustomed to.
Yeah. And it's also there's a thing as well, is that when it comes to Vulcan Nuki, Chikawawa and all that, they don't have to do it every 7 years. It's just they've got the compulsion
Yes.
to do it. It doesn't mean that they don't get Vulcan freaky whenever they want to get Vulcan freaky.
And it looks like they're doing it like they do on the Discovery Channel, as the song says, rather than just Do you remember when we were kids? The old joke, "What's that? A Vulcan orgy?"
Yeah. Still funny.
It is. But yeah, I think that was a bit of I'll say a slightly jarring moment. I had to say on a previous episode, like, I'm no prude. I think it was the Enterprise episode because of the decontamination trail. I'm not a prude, but it's like, okay. Although I love to pray in Strange New World.
Yeah, there's so many things in Strange New Worlds that fit Strange New Worlds and fit the character dynamics, but it doesn't necessarily fit canon that well and the overarching story. The Spock and T'Pring thing, it's like they didn't really know each other that much in Amok Time,
Yeah.
whereas they're more developed. And obviously the Chapel and Spock relationship, there's a proper chemistry there in Strange New Worlds, which isn't really there in the original series. So you can understand what's working really, really well for something works really well, but it doesn't necessarily fit. So that's where you've got to see where it's got to go and
Yeah.
see where it's going to go. But they've got something that seems to work, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we need to give it a chance. We need to give it a
yeah,
chance. And I hear a lot of people, and when you talk about like discovering the redesign of the Klingons, yeah, like you point out, like, yeah, but this is not the first time the Klingons have been redesigned, and people go, oh, but they explained that in Enterprise, and we got this explanation. It's like, yeah, but how many years from the motion picture to Enterprise? Like you're looking at like 25 years, pretty much. Um, so tell me again in 25 years' time, how you hate the redesign, because
but I mean,
unless you give it the same chance.
I don't like the redesign of the Klingons in Discovery. And what do the Klingons look like in Strange New Worlds?
Yes, they've
Just saying.
retconned, they've backpedaled because of all the hate. Yes, backpedaled because of the hate. Yeah, but they weren't given the same chance. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Okay,
But
what's your third?
it's not necessarily a batshit. It's something that uh, unless you're gonna do a deep dive into it, but there's something that happens in this episode. There's a conversation that happens in this episode that's probably a bit more important than what people realize it is. And it's the conversation that Pike has with Spock about his trip to Borath, about what he sees in the future, about his fears for the future, which link into the friendship that develops between Pike and Spock. And it links into the development of what Spock will be prepared to do for Pike in the menagerie to get him back to Talos. So if you that conversation there, that it's the touch, it's lighting the fuse of something that is going to pay off later
Yeah,
on. And if you if you're just casually watching it and you're not thinking about what this conversation really means down the line, and it's just a
yeah,
conversation and something that, yeah, it's got this massive ramifications down the line.
yes, foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a cracking observation.
But it's such a big thing in a conversation. I wasn't going to put it in a good because I guess it's a good, but it's something that really, if you haven't paid attention, you need to pay attention to it.
Oh, I think like in the batshit is the right place for it because that when you actually think about it, that's a pretty wild sort of concept for them to include. Especially when you think like the cage wasn't meant for air in the first place. It's kind of, I mean, it's sort of canon now because of the menagerie, but it was never meant to be canon. Yeah, 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 I'm all for that. All for that. My last one is how normally when Star Trek wants to draw a parallel to Monday, which it does a lot, that it's not uncommon. But normally they go for like something very abstract in their alien design. There'll be an abstract trait about them or an abstract, physical design, something like that. But no, these are like kind of unmemorable as aliens go. I know they have like tweaks, but they're incredibly close to humans, I think. Even to the point of wearing shorts.
Yes, Captain, I think I've lost my pants.
Yeah, yeah, they're kind of almost too human. The aliens, yes, they've got unusual eyes and yeah, but
No, knobbly foreheads. Never seen that before. Yeah.
no. But yeah, they're kind of the foreheads. That's the point. It's unmemorable. It's easy to remember them as being human or looking human.
I think that's probably the point. That's probably the point for it, just to make it close to us, closer to us
Yeah,
now, where we can relate.
yeah. Normally it's a bit more abstract though with Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe they wanted to make the point hard. There we go. Any more? You say we've got quite a few.
Oh, let's have a look. No, I think I've pretty much covered them in different butts and bobs. That'll do.
Right.
We've covered it. We've covered the. I mean, the other thing I was gonna do was the Lan Noonien Singh character. Now, to put somebody in with that name and that heritage, when with Space Seeds, Spock, they had to find out who Khan was because the historical records of that time were quite sparse because of the eugenics war and the Third World War and all the rest of it. And here you've got somebody front and center who's got that heritage and, people understand it.
Mm.
It's like, you didn't need that. You know, she could have been. She could have been. Why not make her like a relation of Colonel Green or something like that instead? Or, you know, some if you
Mm.
wanted to, if you wanted to do a callback on something, do it, because I think it's a complete disservice to the character and the actress, because you know the character's great, and you know Christina
Yes.
Chong, Chicka Wow Wow, and all the rest of it. You know what I mean? She's great. You know, but I think again, it's back to the you don't need to call back everything.
Yeah. Oh, Christina Chong's amazing. And shout out to Runa Ewok, her service dog. Yeah. Who has Runa's got her own Instagram channel as well.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah. But yeah, Runa's
Links below.
we've seen Runa in an episode of Strange New Worlds, actually, in
She
the
was the
yeah.
fantasy one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, she was. She had Runa in that. Yeah, yeah. And Christine's. It makes me like so seeing Christine like as herself at conventions and doing interviews and things. She is more like her fantasy character in that episode than she is like. She's like got the bubbly sort of almost dare I say ditzy kind of.
Ditsy.
You know, so that's who she is. And she's got a great singing career as well. She's got a fantastic EP out, Twin Flames. Links below.
Is it good?
Yeah.
There's links and links and links.
There's going to be so many links in this episode. My goodness. There we go.
On diverting off a little bit in a you know in the coulda woulda shouldas that we occasionally mention. If they eventually get round to doing the next official Star Trek motion picture, my vote would be for them to do a Strange New Worlds proper movie. Because if you can't get the J.J. Abrams cast back together, this would be the logical next one, because you're never going to get the next generation cast together. None of the other series necessarily would work as a straight up motion picture, but this cast you could do it. And I'm not being funny. The sets and everything that you've got in place are 4K, they're HD, they're big enough for the big, they're good enough for the big screen.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't the cast wouldn't be ridiculously expensive. You could actually do a Strange New Worlds movie, $100 million, and it'd look like $250 million.
Yes. Yes, that'd be a good call. My vote would be post Strange New Worlds. So Pike's had his accident, and we see an episode where Kirk is taking command of the Enterprise for the first time.
Thing is, they've done that in the JJ verse. I think they'd be a bit adverse to doing something like that. They'd want to do something. They'd want to do something slightly different.
It's a different Kirk.
Yeah. But
anyway,
I think it would. I think there's scope there, because they could do it without it. I mean, look at Star Wars. Mandalorian and Grogu is their next motion picture, and it's just taken from the TV series.
Oh, I'd not heard there was going to be a Mandalorian movie
next year.
Okay, interesting.
The first trailer's up there now.
Right, okay, I've missed that one.
Sigourney Weaver's in it as well.
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, Sigourney Weaver's in it as well.
Sigourney Weaver, right, okay. Interesting. That'll be one to look at. Right, there you go. You heard it here. Probably not first.
Months ago.
I heard it here first. But there we go. Anyway, that's our mission report on the good, the bad, and the batshit of Strange New Worlds and the episode Strange New Worlds. If you enjoyed our deep dive into what we liked, what we didn't like, and what was weird about this episode, make sure you give us a like, share it with your fellow Trekkies, and make sure you tell us what you thought about this episode in the comments below.
If there's any space left.
If there's any space. below all the links that we're going to share. Do check out those links. Come back and rewatch this episode time and time again so that you get all the links. That's the way to do it. Yeah. And make sure that you subscribe, hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss a single episode coming up. We have 2 more of these good, bad, and batshits for pilot episodes coming up. And then we'll be moving on to other things. So why don't you start letting us know what more good, bad, and batshit you want to see in the future after we finish these? That'd be good to hear. But until next week, peace and long life.
Live long and prosper, guys.